There's so much emphasis on pulling. And I think I realized that climbing is far more of a pushing sport than a pulling sport. I like to emphasize that, and the thing that I've learned the most from climbing, at least in the most recent years, is that there's so much emphasis on pulling. And I think I realized that climbing is far more of a pushing sport than a pulling sport. And if you look at each of your hands and your feet independently, and you think about what's doing what at any time, you're typically doing far more pushing than you are pulling. And really your pulling motion most of the time is just keeping you close enough to the wall to be able to grab the next hold while your legs are pushing you where you're going. And the other element of pushing is that when I grab a hold, I'm not thinking about pulling on that hold. I'm thinking about how I'm interacting when I grab it. And a lot of times I'm able to create better control over, my climbing by pushing between a hold that I go for. So when I grab a hold, I'm actively pushing down into my feet when I grab it rather than pulling up on it. And I think that that's another element of the push conversation that doesn't get talked about a lot in climbing. And I think when you start to see climbing as a pushing sport rather than a pulling sport, I think your technique will kind of jump in leaps and bounds. And it's a lot to grasp. It's a lot to kind of wrap your mind around. And you really have to reprogram how you move from the start.
Jeez, man,
to see it that way. So
just blow my mind here. It totally makes sense, and I love how you phrased it. And I also think one of the things that it highlights where some of the biggest mistakes I've made, and I think a lot of climbers make, is that what they do is they pull up and then they take way off their feet and their feet blow and they fall off. It's got to be one of the most common issues you see, especially when people get excited or get scared, and just thinking about it in this other way about pushing first instead of pulling first. Amazing.
Most times your arms are there to position your hips and your body in a place that your feet can push you in the right direction that you want to go. And so the arms are not the pieces of the puzzle that are gonna give you the power to get there. It's your legs that are gonna push you to where you want to go. It's your arms that are basically positioning you so that you can, make the most use of those footholds. And, there's obvious exceptions to that, like pure campus boulders, this and that are obviously going to require a lot more pushing. But I even tell people on the campus board, when you campus to a subsequent rung and you want to go to the next one, the lower rung is almost more important than the upper rung, because you need to be pushing off of that lower rung to help with the pull motion on the other arm. Most people are just like, that upper arm, since it's ahead of the other one, is the one doing all the pulling work and like the one arm pull up to get to the next one. But that's not how climbing works. It's the holds that you've come from to, and how you continue to interact with those, that are just as important as the hold that looks to be the highest up the wall. And so I think if people start to see their climbing in that way, I think that they'll make, big gains on in a technical sense. And they'll also be more efficient climbers, and they won't need all of this strength and pull strength that they think that they need to achieve their goals in climbing. I see so many people just being like, yeah, if I can hold this much weight on the bar or put this much weight on the hangboard, then I'll be able to climb this grade. And I'm just like, you're not going to be able to do anything with that finger power if you don't also know how to orient yourself over your feet to get where you're going, because your legs are so much stronger than your hands will ever be.